The feeder goes empty. The yard goes still. Most people look up at the sky, scanning for the hawk. But there is no hawk. The birds made a decision, and they made it quietly, and they went somewhere specific. And if you knew where to look, you could walk to within arm's reach of every single one of them in the next 60 seconds. They are not gone. They are hiding. And the place they are hiding is somewhere you have almost certainly walked past this morning without knowing anyone was home. This video is about wind, the most overlooked variable in backyard birding, and the physics that makes it more dangerous for a small bird than most people ever consider. But mostly, it is about the specific places, the exact spots, the ones your birds are using right now on every windy day within the boundaries of your own yard. Stay until the last hiding spot. It is the one most people have literally walked past dozens of times. The birds know you cannot see them there. You are about to prove them wrong. Here's the number that changes how you think about wind and birds forever. 8. Not twice as hard, 8 times as hard. A small bird flying into a 20-mile-per-hour headwind does not expend twice the energy it would in still air. It expends 8 times as much. That is Pennyquick's cubic power law. The energy required for flight increases as a cubic function of airspeed in a headwind. Most people imagine wind as a linear problem. A little more work. The physics says it is an exponential threat. Now, put that in context. A black-capped chickadee weighs 11 grams, 2 pennies. It is burning through its fat reserves every night to maintain a body temperature of 108 degrees Fahrenheit in near-freezing air. The energy budget available for flight is already at the edge of what the bird can sustain, and the 20-mile-per-hour headwind just multiplied the cost of flying by 8. The bird does not fly into that wind. The bird runs the calculation, and the calculation says, shelter, now. But wind is not just expensive to fly through, it's also destroying its bird's insulation at the same time. A bird's warmth depends entirely on the air trapped between the layers of its feathers, the soft, plumulaceous underlayer. In still air, that trapped air is the insulation. In wind, that layer gets penetrated. The airspace compresses. The insulation collapses. A chickadee in 20-mile-per-hour wind is not just losing heat to convection, it's losing heat because its own feathers have stopped working. This is why you see birds fluffed up in cold still air, but sleek and compressed in wind. They are managing two completely different thermal threats. In still cold air, fluffing maximizes the trapped air layer. In wind, fluffing lets the wind in deeper. Compression sheds wind instead of trapping it. Kelty and Lustig documented in 1977 that full compensation through posture and feather position was impossible above certain wind thresholds. Past that point, the only solution is to get out of the wind entirely, which means the bird needs to know exactly where to go. And it does. The birds are not waiting for the wind to arrive before they start responding. They're responding up to 12 to 24 hours before conditions deteriorate. Not because they can see the clouds coming, because they can feel the pressure dropping. Birds detect barometric pressure, not metaphorically, physiologically. The drop in atmospheric pressure that precedes an incoming storm, the same drop that will eventually bring the wind, triggers behavioral and physiological responses before a single gust has arrived. Ketterson and Nolan measured this in dark-eyed juncos in 1976, finding that birds gained body mass at significantly elevated rates in the 24 to 48 hours before a storm, rates that could not be explained by temperature or wind conditions at the time of feeding. The only predictor that fit the data was barometric pressure. That means the feeder that goes absolutely insane in the calm before a big storm, emptying 3 times in an hour while the sky still looks fine, is not coincidence. It's a coordinated emergency fueling event. The birds are loading maximum energy reserves before they expect to spend hours, possibly days, sheltered in places where foraging is impossible. They are doing this because the pressure told them it was time. 12 hours before you check the weather app. So that blue jay frantically burying peanuts across the lawn this morning, cycling from the feeder to the garden to the lawn and back in rapid succession, is not performing random behavior. It's stocking emergency supplies. The storm is coming. It knows, and it's preparing. You were watching something organized and deliberate happening in your yard and did not have the framework to recognize it. Now you do. Every place a bird chooses in high wind shares one characteristic. It reduces the airflow across the bird's body. Researchers call this wind shadow utilization. Once you know what you are looking for, you will see it everywhere. The dense evergreen interior. A northern cardinal pressed into the inner branches of a dense spruce in 25-mile-per-hour wind is experiencing approximately 2 to 3 miles per hour of effective wind at its body surface, not 25, 2 to 3. The branching architecture of a dense conifer creates what fluid dynamics researchers call a tortuous flow path. Wind cannot move in a straight line through it. It loses energy at every obstacle. By the time air reaches the interior of a mature spruce or arborvitae, it has lost 90% of its velocity compared to ambient outside. 90%. That is not a windbreak, that is a wall. And the cardinal has known this since before your house existed. The cavity. Cavity roosting species, chickadees, titmice, nuthatches, woodpeckers, shift to cavity use significantly earlier in the afternoon on high wind days and emerge significantly later the following morning. The reason is simple physics. An enclosed cavity reduces convective heat loss to near zero, regardless of what the wind is doing outside. A tree cavity in 40-mile-per-hour wind has approximately the same interior air movement as a tree cavity in dead calm, almost none. The detail that stops most people: a chickadee does not simply retreat to the nearest cavity in high wind. It selects specifically for cavities on the leeward side of trees, not the windward face, but the side where the trunk itself creates a wind shadow over the opening. A chickadee's choice of cavity is aerodynamically reasoned. The ground under dense shrubs. When wind rises, robins do not go higher into the trees. They go to the ground, specifically to the ground under the densest available vegetation, pressed flat. At 1 inch above bare ground, wind speed is typically 20 to 30% of what a weather station measures at the standard 10-meter height. At 1 inch above dense leaf litter, it can drop further. Combine that ground-level wind shadow with a dense shrub canopy above, and the effective wind speed at the base of that shrub is almost immeasurable compared to the open yard 3 feet away. A robin lying flat on the ground under a dense shrub in high wind is not injured. It is not sick. It is performing a precise energy conservation posture that minimizes exposed surface area to both wind and cold. Millions of people have seen a robin in this posture and reached for their phone to call a wildlife rehabilitator. Now you know what you are actually looking at. Inside a mature brush pile, wind speed at ground level is reduced by 85 to 95% compared to ambient outside. The chaotic, irregular architecture of fallen branches and leaf litter creates overlapping wind shadows at dozens of different heights simultaneously. There is nowhere a small bird can position itself inside a mature brush pile and still be exposed to significant airflow. On a high wind day, that pile contains robins, song sparrows, juncos, wrens, possibly a towhee, all pressed into the interior, all within arm's reach of where you walk when you take out the recycling. None of them flush because the shelter is worth the proximity to a person. You have walked past a packed shelter on every windy day for years without knowing it was occupied. The leeward fence line. Thomas Grubb at Ohio State published research in 1978 showing that dark-eyed juncos and white-throated sparrows consistently selected feeding sites on the leeward side of objects when wind exceeded approximately 10 miles per hour. When he placed equal food on both windward and leeward sides of barrier objects, birds overwhelmingly fed on the leeward side, not for the food, for the wind shadow. Walk along the leeward side of your fence on any windy day and look along the base. Within 18 inches of the fence surface, the ground-feeding sparrows, juncos, and towhees are compressed into that strip. They are invisible from the house because the fence itself blocks the view. Walk the fence line, they are there. The building leeward wall. Your house is the largest windbreak in your yard. The leeward face creates an extended wind shadow reaching 20 to 30 meters downwind. The area immediately below your roof overhang on the leeward side is even more specific. Wind coming over the roofline creates a low pressure zone along the wall face that reduces wind speed below ambient even at the surface. House sparrows, swallows, and wrens have nested in eave gaps for thousands of years, not because of tradition, because the aerodynamics of a building's leeward face create reliable, predictable shelter regardless of wind direction. They are not using your house by accident. They mapped it. The cardinal. In high wind, a male cardinal presses into the innermost branches of the densest available evergreen, against the trunk, feathers compressed. Counterintuitive. Instinct says fluff for warmth, but wind correct. A compressed feather layer sheds wind, a fluffed one lets it in. Cardinals in high wind disappear from open feeders entirely and reappear pressed so far toward the trunk of your largest shrub that you need to part the outer branches to find them. The chickadee. At 20 mph, metabolic rate increases 25 to 40% above still air baseline. The birds compensate partially by entering regulated hypothermia, deliberately lowering body temperature to reduce metabolic demand. This is not distress, it is strategy. But at high wind combined with low temperature, even hypothermia is insufficient. The cavity is the only solution. The blue jay. The pre-storm caching sequence, frantic burying of seeds and nuts across the yard in rapid succession, is a barometric pressure response. It happens while conditions are still calm. A blue jay caching aggressively on an apparently fine morning is detecting an approaching weather system before your weather app has updated. Not preparing for tomorrow, preparing for the storm that arrives in 12 hours. The mourning dove. In moderate wind, doves frequently remain exposed and streamline into it, bill pointed into the wind, body shaped like a teardrop. Dove feathers have unusually tight barbial structure that resists wind penetration better than most songbirds. But above 25 to 30 mph, even doves retreat, pressing into the junction of a large branch and trunk, where the branch creates a local wind shadow. The robin. The flat posture on the ground under dense vegetation. Remember it. You will see it now. The brush pile in the corner you have been meaning to clean up for 2 seasons? You did not create a mess. You created the most effective multi-species wind shelter in your entire yard, an 85 to 95% wind reduction inside, at ground level, with entrances from every direction. The thing that looked like neglect has been functioning as protection on every windy day since you stopped tidying it. The birds found it before you thought to look. The gap between the base of your largest foundation shrub and the house wall. Shrub canopy above, house wall behind, ground below. Wind cannot reach it from the front, the back, or below. House wrens and song sparrows use these gaps on every windy day. Walk to the base of your largest leeward foundation shrub and look into the gap. You will likely find the bird that does not move when you approach, because moving is expensive and the shelter is worth your proximity. The interior of the ornamental grass clump. If you have large ornamental grasses, the interior of that clump is sheltered by the outer stalks deflecting wind around it. Small sparrows, song sparrows, white-throated sparrows, Lincoln sparrows on migration press into the base and become completely invisible from outside. The clump looks empty. It has never been empty on a windy day. You have walked past it every single time without ever looking inside. The next time your feeder empties and the yard goes still, pause. Walk outside instead. Go to the leeward side of the fence and look along the base. Go to the brush pile and stand quietly next to it. Go to the foundation shrub gap and crouch down. Part the outer stalks of the ornamental grass and look at the base. The birds are not gone. They are in the layer of your yard that was invisible to you until right now. They have been there on every windy day. They ran the same calculation bird ancestors have been running for 50 million years, and the answer brought them to your brush pile, your fence line, your foundation gap. You built better shelter than you knew. You just never looked for who was using it. Tell me in the comments, which one will you look for first? And if you go outside this week and find one, tell me what you found. I read every single one. I will see you in the next one.